The moment I heard her laugh, my stomach tightened like a clenched fist. It was light, almost musical, but to me, it sounded like the echo of my worst memories. I was standing in my mother's kitchen, holding a tray of teacups, when my brother walked in with his new fiancée. Her smile was dazzling, her posture confident, the kind of woman who owned every room she entered. Everyone admired her charm, everyone except me. Because when she laughed again, that sharp, taunting giggle, something inside me whispered, "You've heard that before." I didn't say a word. I smiled through the ache in my chest, set the tray down, and wiped my hands on my apron as if that could wipe away the sudden wave of dread. She reached out her hand to me. "Hi. You must be Emily," she said warmly. "I've heard so much about you." "I'm Clara." Clara. The name didn't mean much at first, but the way she said it, slow, deliberate, like she'd practiced it, unsettled me. Her eyes were sharp, though her lips held a polite smile. "Nice to meet you," I replied, forcing my voice steady. But as our hands met, something flickered behind her gaze, a split second of recognition she tried to hide. My pulse quickened. Had we met before? I told myself I was overthinking. Maybe she just reminded me of someone from school. Maybe that cruel smirk I thought I saw was just my imagination. But deep down, I knew. There was something about the tilt of her head, the faint scar above her eyebrow. By the time dinner was over, I couldn't eat a single bite. I just kept watching her laugh, tell stories, touch my brother's arm with that same hand that once shoved me into lockers. And the thought that my brother, my sweet, trusting brother, was in love with her made me sick. Before that night, life had been peaceful. After Dad passed, it had just been Mom, Michael, and me in the house for years. Michael was my younger brother, 3 years behind me, always the golden boy of the family. Where I was quiet, he was charming. Where I studied, he dreamed. We were different, but we'd always had each other's backs. I worked as an elementary school art teacher in town, a job that gave me both joy and calm. My days were predictable, lesson plans, sticky fingers covered in paint, and laughter echoing through small classrooms. It was simple, steady, and safe. Michael, on the other hand, had been away for a few years, working in the city. He visited on holidays, bringing small gifts and stories about his new life. I'd missed him more than I admitted. So when he called one weekend saying, "I'm bringing someone special home," I was genuinely happy for him. "Finally," I teased, "someone managed to put up with you?" He laughed over the phone. "You'll love her, Em. She's kind, smart, you'll see." I believed him. Of course I did. He'd always had good judgment when it came to people, until that night. When I first saw Clara walk through the door, holding a bouquet of lilies for Mom and a bottle of wine for me, she seemed perfect, too perfect. Her charm flowed like honey. She called my mother Mrs. Green with just the right blend of respect and affection. She complimented our home, helped set the table, even offered to wash dishes after dinner. Mom adored her immediately. "Michael, you've done well," she said with that approving smile only mothers have. And I wanted to agree. I really did. But every time Clara spoke, something in me twitched. Her voice carried a faint echo of someone who used to whisper awful things behind my back. Her gestures, the way she flipped her hair, the confident way she sat, one leg crossed over the other, it all tugged at half-buried memories from years ago. After they left that night, I sat by the window long after everyone went to bed. The sky was ink black, the town asleep. But I couldn't rest. I kept replaying that moment, her laugh, her eyes, her voice, trying to remember where I'd seen her before. It wasn't until the next morning, as I was pouring coffee, that it hit me. Clara Benson. That was her name now. But back in middle school, her name had been Claire Benson. And Claire Benson was the girl who'd made my 8th grade life a living nightmare. The realization hit like cold water. I sat there gripping my mug, heart pounding, as the memories flooded back, the cruel jokes, the stolen notebook, the day she locked me in the supply closet while the class laughed outside. She was the reason I'd started skipping school, pretending to be sick just to avoid the torment. The reason I'd lost my voice for months, too scared to speak up in class, afraid of being mocked again. But it had been more than 15 years. People change, right? Maybe she had too. Maybe she didn't even remember me. Still, when Michael called later that day, inviting us all to brunch at the new cafe in town, I hesitated. "Come on, Em," he urged. "She really liked you. Said you reminded her of someone from her old school." The words hit me like a dart. "From her old school?" I repeated carefully. "Yeah," he said cheerfully. "Isn't that funny?" I forced a laugh, but my throat tightened. She remembered me, I was sure of it. At brunch, Clara looked effortlessly polished in a cream sweater and gold earrings that caught the sunlight. She smiled warmly, as if we were old friends. "Emily," she said, hugging me, and for a moment I froze. I smelled her perfume, the same floral scent that used to linger in the girls' locker room after she and her friends left. "I was just telling Michael," she continued, sitting down, "that you look so familiar. Where did you go to middle school?" Her tone was casual, but her eyes were testing me, probing. I hesitated. "Lincoln Middle," I said quietly. She tilted her head. "Oh, really? Me too." And then she smiled, that same knowing smile that once followed me down hallways. It wasn't my imagination anymore. She knew. And now, she was dating my brother. I stirred my coffee, pretending not to notice the chill running down my spine. I wanted to ask her right there, "Do you remember what you did to me?" But Michael was watching us, happy and unaware. So I smiled instead, the way I'd learned to when I was younger, polite, quiet, invisible. But one thing had changed. This time, I wasn't a scared little girl. This time, she wasn't going to get away with it. That night, I couldn't sleep. The air felt heavy in my room, as if every unspoken word between us was floating in the dark. I turned on my lamp, pulled out an old shoebox from under my bed, the one I hadn't opened in years. Inside were little fragments of my childhood, school ribbons, folded notes from friends, a few crumpled photos. And there she was. Claire Benson. In one of the class pictures, she stood right beside me, her hair tied back in a high ponytail, her grin wide and cruel in my memory. My younger self, smaller and shy, stared at the camera with an awkward smile that didn't reach her eyes. I remembered the day vividly now, the day this photo was taken. She'd whispered something about my thrift store shoes right before the photographer said, "Smile." And the whole class had snickered while the flash went off. I closed the box and exhaled slowly. I could forgive a lot of things, but not the years it took to rebuild my self-worth. The next morning, Mom was making breakfast when I walked into the kitchen. "You're up early," she said, buttering toast. "Couldn't sleep," I murmured. She glanced up. "You're still thinking about Michael's fiancée, aren't you?" I hesitated. "Mom, do you remember me talking about that girl who made middle school hard for me?" "Of course, honey," she said gently. "Claire something?" I nodded. "Claire Benson." She frowned. "That's her last name too, isn't it?" "Exactly." Mom froze, butter knife in hand. "Emily, are you saying?" "I think Clara is her." "I'm almost sure." For a long moment, she didn't speak. Then she sighed and set the knife down. "People change, sweetheart," she said softly. "It's been years. Maybe you should talk to her first, before assuming the worst." I wanted to believe that. I really did. But my gut told me otherwise. There had been a flicker of mockery in Clara's eyes, subtle but unmistakable. 2 weeks passed before the next family gathering, a small barbecue at Michael's new house. I told myself I'd keep things civil, maybe even test the waters. But Clara made it impossible. From the moment I arrived, she treated me with that same sweet-smiling condescension that used to cut deeper than any insult. "Oh, Emily," she exclaimed, her voice dripping with cheer. "You look so much like your old self. Still the quiet one, huh?" Michael laughed lightly, unaware of the sting behind her words. She's always been that way, he said fondly. I forced a smile. Some things never change. Her gaze lingered on me, assessing, almost daring me to respond. Later that evening, while everyone gathered around the grill, Clara found me alone by the kitchen counter. She leaned in close. You know, she whispered, I was wondering when you'd remember me. My blood ran cold. She smiled, eyes glinting. You were such a funny little thing back then. Always so easy to tease. Tease? I repeated quietly, my voice trembling with restrained anger. She shrugged, sipping her wine. Come on, Emily. We were kids. You can't still be holding on to that, can you? I stared at her, every old wound reopening. You made my life miserable, I said softly. You made me hate myself. For a moment, she actually looked surprised, as if my pain was something she hadn't considered real. Then she laughed lightly, brushing it off. Oh, don't be so dramatic. We all had our moments. I set my glass down, heart pounding. Does Michael know who you are? Her expression shifted, a flicker of panic quickly masked by a smile. No, she said simply. And I'd appreciate if it stayed that way. After all, why bring up old schoolyard drama? We're family now. She walked away before I could respond, leaving me frozen in place. Family. That word echoed like an insult. That night, I couldn't look at my brother the same way. He was so happy, completely unaware that the woman he loved had once taken pleasure in breaking me down. I wrestled with myself for days. Part of me wanted to tell him everything, to warn him who she really was. But another part, the protective sister in me, couldn't stand the idea of destroying his joy without proof that she hadn't changed. Maybe I needed to see for myself. So I started watching. Whenever we were together, I noticed small things, the way she subtly corrected him in front of others, how she controlled conversations with charm that bordered on manipulation. She was skilled, the same social predator she'd always been, only now she wore sophistication like armor. But one evening gave me the confirmation I needed. It was Michael's birthday dinner. Clara had planned it herself, an intimate affair with friends and family. Everything was perfect until I made a simple joke about Michael's old haircut from college. Oh, I have pictures of that somewhere, I said, laughing. Clara's eyes hardened instantly. Maybe you shouldn't, Emily, she said in a low voice only I could hear. You tend to embarrass yourself when you talk too much. It was subtle. A private jab disguised as poise. But I recognized it instantly. It was her old tactic, destroy quietly, where no one else could see. My cheeks flushed hot with anger, but I stayed silent. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction. Instead, I smiled sweetly. You're right, Clara. I've learned a lot since school. Her eyebrow twitched. School? I met her gaze, steady and calm. Yes. Lincoln Middle. For the first time, she faltered, just for a second, before quickly recovering her smile. Well, she said softly, isn't it nice how small the world is? She raised her glass. And I knew then, with perfect clarity, that she hadn't changed at all. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a mask, and I was the only one who could see behind it. That night, as I drove home, I made a decision. If she wanted to pretend nothing happened, fine. But before she married my brother, before she became part of my family, she would face what she did. Not out of revenge. But because I deserved peace. And maybe, just maybe, my brother deserved the truth. I gave myself a week to think about it, to calm down, to plan, to make sure I wasn't acting out of anger. But the more I tried to let it go, the heavier it sat in my chest. Every time I saw my brother's name flash on my phone, my stomach knotted. He'd talk excitedly about wedding plans, about how kind and thoughtful Clara was, how lucky he felt. And I would smile, my voice trembling just enough for me to notice. How could I tell him that the woman he loved once made me cry behind the bleachers, calling me names that still echoed in my mind when I felt small. No, if I told him, I needed to do it right. Not as an accusation, but as truth. So I decided to confront her first. Alone. The opportunity came when Michael called one evening and said Clara wanted to meet me for lunch, just sister to sister. Perfect. We met at a quiet cafe downtown, the kind with soft music and the smell of roasted coffee beans that clung to your hair. She arrived right on time, her smile as poised as ever. Emily, she said warmly, sitting down across from me. I'm glad we could do this. I know things have been a little tense. I looked at her, the perfectly curled hair, the neat manicure, the flawless composure, and for the first time I wasn't afraid. I'm glad you asked, I said evenly. There's something we should talk about. Her smile didn't falter, but I saw her shoulders stiffen. Oh? What's on your mind? I folded my hands on the table. Lincoln Middle School. 8th grade. You and me. Her expression froze for just a fraction of a second before she forced a light laugh. Still on that, she said, waving a hand. Emily, that was ages ago. We were children. Children don't forget being humiliated every day, I said quietly. You hurt me, Clara. And not just once. You made sure everyone else did, too. Her lips tightened. You're exaggerating. I leaned forward slightly. You locked me in the supply closet for an hour. Do you remember that? I missed my math exam because of it. My teacher thought I'd skipped on purpose. She looked away, jaw clenching. You're digging up things that don't matter anymore. They matter to me, I said firmly. You might have moved on, but I lived with that shame for years. You taught me what it felt like to be small, to be nothing. And now, you're marrying my brother, a man who thinks you're pure kindness. For the first time, the charm slipped. Her eyes hardened, cold and defensive. You think you can ruin this for me? She hissed quietly. After all these years? Grow up, Emily. Everyone has a past. I stared at her, stunned by how easily she dismissed it. I'm not trying to ruin anything, I said softly. I just wanted to hear you say it. To acknowledge what you did. But she only smiled again, that same smug, poisonous smile from my childhood. I don't owe you anything, she said. And if you tell Michael your little sob story, I'll make sure he sees you as jealous and bitter. Trust me, I know how to make people believe me. Her words cut deep, but this time, they didn't destroy me. I sat back, calm, steady. Maybe, I said quietly. But truth has a way of coming out. And when it does, I hope you're ready. She stood abruptly, gathering her purse. This was a mistake. Then she walked out, her heels clicking against the tile, sharp, angry, retreating. I sat there for a long while, letting the hum of the cafe settle my nerves. I wasn't shaking. I wasn't crying. For the first time, I felt free. Because no matter what happened next, I had faced her. I had looked the monster from my childhood in the eye and stayed standing. But the peace didn't last. 2 days later, Michael called. His voice was tight, confused. What happened between you and Clara? I froze. She told you? She said you accused her of bullying you in school. Said you were making things up to get attention. The words hit me like a slap. She what? Emily, I know you, he said quickly. You're not a liar. But this just doesn't sound like her. She's been nothing but kind since I met her. Michael, she was that girl, I said firmly. Ask her. She even admitted it, well, almost. She doesn't deny going to Lincoln Middle. She knows who I am. He sighed heavily. Look, I'm not saying you're wrong. But maybe you're remembering things differently. You've always been sensitive about your school years. Don't, I said, voice trembling. Don't do that. Don't make this about me being sensitive. There was silence on the line. I just I don't know what to believe, he finally said. She's the woman I love. I need to think. When the call ended, I sat there staring at my phone, tears blurring my vision. It wasn't just about the past anymore. It was about losing the only person I'd ever truly trusted, because of her. The next few days were unbearable. Mom noticed the tension, of course. She called me one evening, her voice soft and worried. "Sweetheart, Michael says you and Clara had a disagreement." "That's one way to put it," I said bitterly. She sighed. "I don't know what to tell you, Em. If she really did those things, she should admit it. But if she doesn't, your brother's in the middle, and you know how he hates conflict." I rubbed my temples. "I can't just pretend, Mom. She's marrying into our family. Every time I see her, I'll remember what she did." "I know," Mom said gently. "But the truth has a way of revealing itself. Give it time." Time. That was the one thing I didn't have much of. The engagement party was just a week away, and I had to decide whether I'd stay silent, or make sure everyone finally knew who Clara really was. Because if she thought I'd let her rewrite history, erase what she did and walk into my family as if she belonged, she was wrong. This wasn't revenge. This was justice. And for once in my life, I wasn't afraid to seek it. The night of the engagement party arrived with that tense, glittering energy that always made me feel slightly out of place. Mom had spent the day cooking, arranging flowers, and reminding me to be kind, no matter what. I promised I'd try, but inside, my heart was a storm. Michael's friends and coworkers filled the backyard, their laughter mixing with the scent of grilled food and soft music. String lights twinkled above us, and Clara floated through the crowd like a hostess from a magazine, perfect posture, perfect smile, perfect lies. I stood near the edge of the patio, watching her charm everyone. The same way she once charmed teachers while whispering cruelty behind their backs. When she spotted me, her eyes flickered briefly, a flash of warning beneath the sweetness. "Emily," she called, waving as if we were best friends. "Come, I want you to meet everyone." I joined her circle reluctantly. "This is Michael's sister," she announced proudly. "The artist in the family." I smiled thinly. "Art teacher, actually." "Oh right," she said breezily. "You used to draw a lot in school, didn't you? I think I remember your doodles." A few people laughed politely. They didn't know she'd just slipped in a jab, that doodles was the same word she used to mock my sketchbook years ago. But I noticed the look in her eyes, smug, confident, sure I wouldn't say a word. And for a moment, I almost didn't. Old habits die hard. Then I saw Michael, standing a few feet away, watching her with the same adoring smile he'd worn since the day he met her. He believed every word she said, every gentle gesture. Something inside me broke. I couldn't let him walk into a marriage built on deceit, not when the woman standing beside him had once found joy in breaking me. So I took a deep breath and spoke. "Actually," I said calmly, "Clara and I go way back." The group turned toward me, curious. Clara's smile faltered slightly. "We went to school together," I continued. Though back then, she went by Claire. A ripple of confusion passed through the group. Michael frowned. "Wait, you two knew each other before?" Clara let out a small, nervous laugh. "Oh, I wouldn't call it that. We just went to the same school." But I wasn't done. My voice stayed soft, steady. "You were more than that," I said. "You made sure everyone knew my name, and not in a good way. You mocked me for the clothes I wore, called me names, told everyone I was weird. You used to lock me out of class, remember?" The crowd went silent. Even the music seemed to fade. Clara's face tightened, the mask slipping. "Emily, that was years ago. You're really bringing up middle school at my engagement party?" "Yes," I said. "Because the person you were then, the one who laughed while I cried, she's still standing here. You told me yourself you didn't feel sorry." Michael stepped forward, confusion and disbelief written across his face. "Clara, is this true?" Her composure cracked. Michael, it's ridiculous. We were kids. Everyone teased each other. No, I said quietly. You didn't tease. You destroyed. You made sure I believed I was worthless. She turned to him, desperation creeping into her tone. You're going to believe her over me? She's always been jealous of me, can't you see that? Jealous. That old word again, the same one bullies use when they're caught. Michael's gaze moved between us, searching, trying to piece it together. Clara, did you go to Lincoln Middle? Her silence was answer enough. He stepped back slightly. Why didn't you ever tell me you knew my sister? Because it didn't matter, she snapped, her voice rising. I didn't think it was important. It's important to me, he said softly. Because she matters to me. For a long, tense moment, no one spoke. The guests shifted awkwardly, unsure whether to leave or stay. Clara looked around, realizing her charm was no longer working. Her perfect smile had vanished, replaced by the cold, defensive stare I remembered all too well. Fine, she said finally. If this is how your family's going to treat me, maybe I don't belong here. She grabbed her purse and stormed off toward the driveway, the sound of her heels echoing through the night. The silence that followed was deafening. Michael stood there, hands trembling, eyes clouded with heartbreak and confusion. He said softly, is everything you said true? I nodded. Every word. He closed his eyes, exhaling slowly. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Because I wanted to be sure, I said. And because I didn't want to take your happiness away. But you deserve to know who she really is. He rubbed his face, his voice breaking slightly. I can't believe she'd do something like that, and then lie. Mom came over then, gently touching his shoulder. Sometimes the past tells us more about a person than the future they promise, she said quietly. He didn't speak for a long time. He just stared at the empty gate where Clara had disappeared. Then finally, he whispered, thank you for telling me. Later that night, after the guests had quietly left and the house had fallen silent, Michael came to find me sitting on the porch. The air was cool, and the sound of crickets filled the distance between us. I called her, he said quietly, sitting beside me. She admitted it. Said she didn't think it mattered anymore. I swallowed hard. I'm sorry, Michael. He shook his head. No, I'm sorry. For doubting you. For not seeing it sooner. We sat there in silence for a while, the tension easing little by little. Then he said something I didn't expect. I don't think I can marry someone who can't own their past. I turned to him. You're doing the right thing. He nodded, eyes distant. I thought I knew her. But tonight, I saw someone else. He looked at me then, his expression softening. You always protected me growing up. Guess you're still doing it. I smiled faintly, tears blurring my vision. That's what sisters do. The next day, Clara packed her things and left town. No dramatic farewell, no tearful apology. Just silence, the kind of silence that follows truth when it finally takes root. And though part of me wished she'd said sorry, a bigger part of me knew it didn't matter anymore. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't the scared girl she used to control. I was the woman who'd found her voice, and used it. Weeks passed. The house slowly returned to normal, at least on the surface. Mom stopped walking on eggshells. Michael went back to work. And I went back to my art classroom, where the kids' laughter and paint-streaked hands reminded me what kindness looked like in its purest form. But every so often, I'd catch my reflection and remember that night, the trembling in my voice, the hush that followed, and the moment I realized I'd stopped being afraid of her. It felt strange, powerful, peaceful. A month later, I got a letter. No name on the front, just my address in neat, looping handwriting. I recognized it instantly. Inside, a single page. Emily. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted to say I remember everything. The way I treated you. The way I made you feel. I told myself it was just jokes, but I knew exactly what I was doing. When you spoke that night, I saw myself clearly for the first time. You were brave. I was cruel. I'm sorry. Clara. For a long time, I just stared at the letter, unsure what to feel. Anger? Relief? Sadness? Maybe all of it. Because no matter how many years passed, some wounds don't disappear, they just fade until you learn to live around them. But her words, they mattered. Not because they fixed the past, but because they proved she could finally see what I had seen all along. That weekend, Michael came over for dinner again. He looked lighter, freer, like someone who had finally let go of something heavy. You look happier, I said. He smiled. I am. Ended up canceling everything, the venue, the photographer. Lost some deposits, but honestly? I gained peace. We both laughed softly. Then he glanced at the letter on the table. She wrote to you, didn't she? I nodded. Yeah. It wasn't much, but it felt real. He hesitated. Are you going to write back? I shook my head. No. I think the silence is my answer. He smiled gently. Fair. We sat together, the golden glow of evening washing over us. For the first time in a long time, it didn't feel like our family was holding its breath anymore. That night, after Michael left, I took the letter to my studio, the little corner room filled with sketches, paint, and light. On the table sat an unfinished canvas I'd been avoiding for months. A self-portrait, one I could never quite complete. But as I looked at Clara's words one last time, something shifted inside me. I picked up a brush. This time, I didn't paint the girl who'd been mocked, or the one who stayed silent. I painted the woman who had stood in front of a crowd and told the truth, trembling but unbroken. When I stepped back, I saw her clearly. Strong. Steady. Free. And for the first time in my life, I liked what I saw. Months later, the painting was displayed in a local art show. It wasn't grand, just a quiet community event, full of people who came for the free snacks and soft music. But when a young girl stood in front of my painting and whispered, "She looks brave," I smiled through tears. Yeah, I said softly. She finally is. Sometimes, the people who break you come back, not to rebuild what they destroyed, but to remind you how strong you became without them. Forgiveness isn't about letting them back in. It's about letting yourself move on. Because when you find your voice, no one can silence you again.